All right. So we discussed how we were working with the lead gen activities and the traffic that came to play for that lead gen, and then how we finalized it and so on and so forth. So those principles still stay active for blitzscaling, right? Because this is all about digitization and digitalization, right? So, so for blitzscaling, those are the levers that will be used in those discrete steps. So if you see, it starts from traffic generation, moving to lead generation activities, into causing a funnel for your relevant digital assets that you want to create, and then you start enabling your blitzscaling activities. Okay. Now, if you remember, as I told you, right, you grow very fast, don't bother too much about quality and other levers that are required to do, but your purpose is to just grow and create that tribe for yourself in form of a community. And then once you reach there, you get several feedbacks that A is nothing, A could be wrong, or B could be wrong, or C might improve here and a D there, and so on and so forth. You start putting those activities into play, right? A typical case would be, suppose you put a courseware in place, which then you're just bombarding people out there whom you think are the right persona after doing your research and this and the other. You create your first level of lead generation activities, which is caused from certain traffic activities that you enable some time back. You move that lead into lead generations, leads that you generated into your funnels that you think are the relevant ones, and you now would have had a basic, so to speak, mass in place, which then you can cater to, which you might make a community out of, right? Now, with that, what you do is where the blitzscaling really comes into play. Okay, you start jumping from there. You get several feedbacks, you start getting your several inputs, and then you start in a parallel activity, start kind of managing and improving those elements while you still continue with your path to growth. Okay. So if you see how the typical classic blitzscaling works, we discussed that. It goes with quick scale up, right? And then you achieve a critical mass, and then you stabilize, and then you start continuing with the growth. That's how typically it works. All right. Now we'll go in depth with each of these topic and level of automation and this and the other. So typical traffic generation activities would include starting with a website to a point where you have your social media presence to the extent that it should. Okay. Uh, the lead gen that happens is basically how you have the personas in place, you focus on certain elements and the group of people, how you create your live and simulated webinars or your seminars and so on and so forth, and then you give certain lead magnets for the people to come in and consume the assets that you're trying to go about selling or or servicing them with. Now that leads to the right kind of people. Now you can use various elements there. Yeah? Funnel is the place where you really get to get very creative, right? Right from retargeting to a three-pronged strategy to a repeated communication, so that people understand and repeatedly know what you're doing as an iteration. Then you throw your brands to people to familiarize themselves with, to see see you or your brand repeatedly, so that they know there's a trust that can be brought about, so the conversions are faster. Okay? And then the feedbacks, right? So in blitzscaling, you now will get into a mode of your lead and your traffic and your funnels getting automatically created even when you're away from the system completely. Okay? And completely means you're really totally away because you've sequenced your steps accordingly. And that happens using various modes and means of things, which we'll cover in the subsequent topics. But typically, like influencer media or CPA traffic or additional assets that you hang up, which could be an aggregator for you, which could be horizontal ones that come into existence. So you improve it vertically by the feedbacks that you get. All right. So you improve. That means you, like for example, rise 1 to rise 6 we have, right? Depending on the feedback and the inputs that we get, we might scale up vertically, right? And I'd already talked about how horizontally we are going to. That's already in play. Okay, so similarly, your assets could work in a similar fashion, and then the communication doesn't stop, and that's one of the major elements of blitzscaling. Until you have that critical mass of critical mass is never enough, but you create that large zones of people and tribes that you want to get into. okay, whom you can then repeatedly serve, because then they keep on serving on your presence as an ecosystem to go about doing. So that's the blitzscaling elements, and we go into details as a process. Okay, so with that, to finish the introduction elements, how we will use the the four-step formula right from a traffic to blitzscale using with the rise bar system which we had talked about earlier, right? I will not go in again in depth here because those the subsequent ones will have the details. But what I would like to mention to you is how we use the BAAP system, which is blitzscaling using activate, administer, and proliferate. All right. Similarly, this whole element of blitzscaling that we talked about, right, from traffic to funnelizing and then blitzscaling, is all about proliferation. Okay, so the P stays common for the two, but at subsequent times where, for example, in L1 we use activate to and put a system in place for doing that, right? As you see an L1 activate there, that is a automated system which actually helps the traffic element of things. Similarly, a lead gen is done by, if you realize, by the traffic retargeting systems, right? That is where lead gen comes into play. So you use marketing campaigns, your present community helps in doing that, and then your lead segregation. So whatever leads that you get, we discussed this earlier, right? You want to just funnelize them for the right activities and the targeted audience that you really want to directly come, so that you bring your CTA so that they consume the right products that you kind of serve. This happens, okay? So the lead gen comes about because from there. Then you do something called system and you manage a hub, the control hub that comes to existence. This happens when your segregated leads comes into your automated system, where you analyze or you go about creating the levels of people or the segments of people you want to cater to at various juncture. That goes as a mechanism, and then you get reports for those things using some automated systems, which then gets fed back to your control hub in the process, which then goes about proliferating from target 1 to the target 4 that has been discussed, right? So the funnel eventually leads to your blitzscaling, which is the next level of automation, and that automation comes about by completely using BARP in its run alone mode, okay, where you don't interfere. You just give in the feedbacks. That is an entry system of the sequencing and the emails and this and the other, okay, and that they use different systems, which we'll come to in a moment. So that is how blitzscaling would work as a system and as a process, where you map right from lead gen to your blitzscaling activity using automated systems, and some of them have been discussed at basic level during Rise 1, Rise 2, which you will be now familiarized with. Okay, we'll go in depth with what is it required at each step during the way. Okay, I'll see you on the next one.